Hey, everybody, it's Eddie in Tokyo, and today I have the pleasure of talking with Quincy Jones. He's a young developer who is in love with the technology that is driving the cryptocurrency space. Quincy is delightful off camera, and his passion for what the blockchain and smart contracts can bring is abundantly apparent. His ability to bring people beyond the green candles, I think, is very important. And as more people who get excited about what can be built, yeah, in turn, the result will be new projects will emerge that we haven't even dreamed of yet. Here is his YouTube channel, Coin Club Crypto. He wanted me to be sure to highlight that. And if you want to find him on Twitter, you can find him at Quincy Chillbro. And there was one question that was repeatedly asked of me to ask him, and I just forgot, and it is the term rippling. But you can go to his website, and under the crypto features XRP, he talks about rippling. So that is where you can get the answer for that. All right, let's get right into the interview that I had with him. Hey, Quincy, how are you?
How are you?
I'm good. I could barely sleep. I was so excited to talk with you. I'm really
Yeah,
excited.
yeah, I'm really excited too. It seems like the internet's also excited. So
Yeah, so, you've done a lot of content in the last 48 hours.
yeah,
I caught a lot of it. I might have missed some, but I saw Jeannie, and of course I saw the XDC video that you did on your own channel. And yeah, and then I went back and took a look throughout. And in the last video, when you talked to Jeannie, you were asked about your top 4 projects or tokens. And you came pretty fast to the conclusion. You put them in an order, which I don't know if that order had any significance, but you said XDC followed by XLM, followed by Algo, followed by XRP. But you had a caveat with XRP. You said that you really needed to have regulatory clarity.
it's
So,
sorry. It's
no,
actually
that's
sort of
okay.
the not really. I don't really need regulatory clarity. It's more of the only thing that regulatory clarity is going to bring, in my opinion, that's going to change anything is more that unpredictable factor of what could happen that's not being anticipated. Regardless of whatever happens, I believe in XRP and the XRP ledger as a whole. It's
Mhm.
just one of those things where if you're looking at it from a perspective of a retail trader, there could be a regulatory stance in which regular retail traders couldn't hold the token, and that's really strictly from a regulatory standpoint
Mhm.
or a retail standpoint. If you were a enterprise of any sorts or anything like that, I still would believe in the technology and the token as full through and through. It's just if you are a retail trader, or if you're somebody who's not going to be if you're not going to be going to the regulatory clearance needed as a enterprise, you're going to need to be concerned for some of the regulatory things that are coming forward. Now, if you're going to be someone that wants to enter that space and go through whatever regulatory hoops that you need to go through, I don't see any problems with XRP as a whole in regards to the technology. It just depends on where you are in regards to managing that regulatory stance.
Yeah, and I read a couple of comments in that thread that I put on Twitter, and people said, well, we don't have regulatory clarity on Algo, XLM, and XDC. XDC is out of Singapore, right? So we
Right.
probably don't have that same kind of concerns. XLM is completely decentralized, even though we've got Stellar Foundation out of San Francisco, and they seem pretty separate. However, it seemed pretty separate between Ripple and XRP too. And then we've got Algo, which was started by Silvio Micali, right? And he had a group of mathematicians and computer scientists around him. They're in Boston, but yet that is kind of a hybrid blockchain because it does have private and public capabilities, very similar to how Corda is, where you can run 2 different types. But yeah, I don't know, being in United States? I mean, this is my question. Don't you think there's also some risk with Algo and XLM?
Not the same risk. So what a lot of people try to do is they'll take what's happening with XRP and they'll assume that it's going to happen with everybody else, and it can, but I don't think that's essentially what's happening here. I think the biggest thing is it's not about XRP, it's about Ripple. And I think a lot of it really just comes down to the SEC is dealing with an American company and they're going to go deal with it however they deal with American companies. And you may say like, well, Algorand has American roots and some of these other projects have American roots. I think the biggest thing, especially when you see in the crypto space and something that's going to set the precedent later in the future, is being a structured, organized company operating on a decentralized platform is going to have certain implications for it. And I think the number one implication has to do with taxes, because it's a global platform you're operating on, even though you're a company that's like regulated or kind of like situated in one country, whatever that country may be. So why so much like on Ripple then? Well, because Ripple is such an established company, and because Ripple is like so big, when it comes to any sort of regulatory clarity, not only to enforce on XRP, but as on the space as a whole, I think they're kind of just using Ripple as the example to set the stage for everything else. Now, this does pose risk, like regulatory risk towards all the other tokens. But what I'm actually really trying to say is a lot of these other tokens were built for these regulatory risks. And if they were going to have the same problems that Ripple and XRP had, they would have basically been put into a group for that. And if you actually look at the SEC lawsuit, the main reason why Ripple's being sued isn't so much because of XRP, the technology. The one reason that they're getting sued is because when they did like their Series C round and raised like $100 million, they gave their investors XRP, and then that basically looks like an investment contract. And that's essentially what rolled out this SEC lawsuit. So when people say like, well, what about these other tokens and it comes to clarity? One, a lot of these other tokens were built with that type of clarity in mind. Not all of them, but some of them. And the ones that haven't, and they haven't really been addressed yet, I think the biggest thing when it comes to clarity is going to come in with this Ripple lawsuit, as opposed to additional lawsuits being issued out like later on. And I don't even think the main risk is with the tokens and the companies of the tokens. I think the main risk is going to be regulatory, whatever the regulatory stances on exchanges are. Because I think one thing that's kind of crazy is exchanges are almost operating like digital banks right now, but it's almost like people are focused more on the companies that are creating the technologies and not this weird middle ground of what is digital finance and what is an exchange's role in digital finance and where does that regulatory play. Like, I think that's a way bigger problem to be had than a simple lawsuit against an American company that uses blockchain technology.
Yeah, well, we're seeing some of that play out right now with the action that was taken against Binance in the UK, right? And I think maybe even something with Canada. That kind of leads me to, I'm going to get through all these questions quickly, but it leads me to think that as a developer, you probably chit chat about that stuff with your fellow coders, right?
I would say, let's say people in the space. There are a lot of people in the space that aren't developers, but they're like financiers. So they hire developers to do the finance thing. So I'd say there's really almost more like finance people in the space. And I don't mean it in like a trader sense. I mean like investment bankers, hedge fund managers, people like that in the space trying to like utilize the technology for their own use cases. Then there are just general sort of, and that's kind of like, I think that's kind of like by design due to how the industry sort of works. But you do see more of, and it's not that these people aren't technical, they're just more, there definitely seems to be a bigger finance space than there is a developer space. And
there's a shortage of developers, right? I mean,
absolutely. Yeah, there absolutely is a huge shortage. And the ones that you do come across are already like hired and bought up by these big companies. So the developers you do see and talk to are already working for like the big companies that are, building these technologies.
Yeah, I asked if you moonlight because I know of a project that you could work on if you wanted to, but I'm sure you get offers like that all the time. You don't have to put that out unless you wanted to put your skills out there for everyone to know that you are available. But anyway, I'm going to move to this question that's a hot one. I'm going to hit the hot ones first. All right. So
Okay.
everybody wants to know if you think R3 will use XRP.
Yes. I think this is beautiful. It's a beautiful question. And the answer is yes. The answer is yes for one simple reason. So R3 using the Corda platform, the Corda platform has a series of features known as Corda Settler. And
Right.
Corda Settler allows you to do off-chain settlements on the Corda blockchain and be able to have integrations that go along with that. Well, one of the main Corda Settler tokens is XRP. It's one of the primary blockchain technologies that's currently being used as Corda Settler as a settlement token, and it was primarily one of the first ones because it did the job of Corda Settler really well in regards to integrating with other blockchain technologies or distributed ledger technologies. So this is something that's been in the works for a while now. This isn't like new. This isn't like when they built Corda Settler. One of the first things they did was where they built it around and with XRP as a settlement token on top of all the other settlements that you can issue with it. But with that being said, and this kind of goes into XRP being used as a whole, XRP is a settlement token. And part of the reason why Corda is so important with this is because you can use that off-chain settlement. You can use XDC and the Corda platform to create smart contracts that are native to your business needs, and then be able to have an external settlement token that's essentially universal with all the other business needs that you don't have to use your smart contract tokens to pay with. Use the settlement token. And that settlement token isn't just XRP, it could be XLM, it could be a simple, the Corda platform's already settled with the Swift GPI wire framework. So you could settle a Swift payment over Corda just as you would settle an XRP payment or a Bitcoin payment or whatever it may be. But XRP being interoperable with Corda Settler and Corda has been a thing for quite a while now. It will be a thing in the future. It will probably be an even bigger thing in the future. But yeah, absolutely. Corda will be using XRP, and not because they want to use XRP. They'll be using XRP because other people are using XRP. It's just a settlement. So it's not that they're like, huge advocates for XRP. And I bet a lot of people saw the lawsuit between Ripple and R3. And it's kind of funny because in my opinion, it's more of a petty drama between $2 billion companies that didn't realize they had billions of dollars on the table till after the fact. So somebody sued. But a lot of people see that and think like, oh no, does this mean they don't know? They're very much interoperable with each other. And Corda's been using XRP as a settlement token in Corda Settler for quite a while now.
Yeah, and somebody did ask me to clarify that when you did some of the, you've worked a little bit on Corda, right? Not Cordite, right? Not the DeFi platform, but Corda, right?
Corda, the open source blockchain platform, yes.
And so,
I primarily use the programming language DAML, digital asset modeling language. A lot of people don't know this, but a lot of people know Solidity as the smart contract language for Ethereum. I use DAML, digital asset modeling language for Corda, and it's also interoperable with Hyperledger Framework, Ethereum, a bunch of other smart contract platforms, on top of being able to launch applications on centralized. There's a lot that goes into this that I kind of wanted to bring up because people don't know this at all. People don't know that there are other smart contract languages out there. But yeah, I primarily work on the Corda platform for building decentralized applications in DAML.
Yeah, I figured that, but I have some Patreons that wanted to specifically ask questions, and I'm giving them a little bit of preference there to get their questions out. So Richard Crook, he built Dazzle, right? The bridge that, are you familiar with that bridge that he built?
I don't know that I am.
Okay. Well,
yeah,
then we won't go down that road. Then the question I have as a developer, which are the most important people in this space, they trump everything, in my opinion. Do you ever want to work on, for example, Cardano?
So one thing about Cardano, and this actually sort of like, I wouldn't say it goes so much for Flare because I got in on the Flare group, but because I can't really touch the Cardano smart contract platform, and you can sort of deal with the like integrated payments so you could pass around the ADA token. I've kind of just never got into it because if I can't get my hands dirty, it's like, what am I going to do? Am I going to sit there and read about it all day? So until Cardano goes live or I can get access to their test network, I don't really have much to say.
Mm,
Uh, and it goes the same for Flare a little bit, but the only difference is I was able to get in the Flare network and I was able to set up some of the Flare test nodes, so it's sort of a little bit different. But something like Cardano, I just can't get my hands dirty with it, so I don't really have too many opinions about it.
I listen to a lot of those videos, and I'm listening to a lot of people from around the world that are building on it. And I just was kind of curious from a developer point of view if that was something you wanted to do. Okay, next question. I was really interested in the video that you talked about where people are trading these lower liquidity marketplaces, and you were zeroing in on these like 15-minute swings where you get a 3% or even less. And because the XRP is such it transacts so fast and it's so cheap, you love to get on both sides of that trade. And I think you actually wrote your own trading bot. Is that right?
Yeah, it's let's say it's a compilation of code that helps me evaluate certain swings in illiquid markets. That's the best way to put it.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And so that started my thinking too. Do you think there's a lot of exchanges that are trading on their own order books?
Oh yeah, actually, so I would probably accuse Bitrue of doing something like this, just because I know they operate off of the XRP ledger. So if you're operating off the XRP ledger, you're able to access the order books of anybody else that's operating off the XRP ledger. So with this being said, it's really easy for an exchange like Bitrue or a big exchange to run arbitrage between multiple other exchanges, not only because they have a huge inventory of orders in their order book with a set of prices, but they can compare all those orders with all the other exchanges that are operating off the decentralized ledger too, and then be able to match up those prices. And since it's so cheap that their spreads could be so thin, but they could still have huge profit margins because of the volume that they're able to pump through there. So I have no doubt in my mind that if they're operating on the XRP ledger, I hands down believe so, because it's one of those things where they could tap their order books into a global network of order books from other exchanges, and then be able to have almost, and what I like to say, almost endless liquidity, because they don't have to necessarily be entirely bound to the size of their network. They have the entire global network of the decentralized exchange to tap into. And like I said, they already have enough assets, they already have enough volume, and they already know what their traders are doing to be able to capitalize off those spread differences, no matter how small, because of how cheap the transactions are.
Yeah, that was just one of those questions as I watched that video just flowed through my mind. What about this video that people were taking clips of it and sharing it really viral about how Bitcoin can't scale past 10% of the population, and that you probably were really good at math, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things where so this is something people need to take into consideration when they look at proof of work systems, because this is sort of where I came down the rabbit hole of this problem, and I was sort of like dumbfounded that you could mine Bitcoin back in 2010 no problem, made a couple Bitcoin and be incredibly wealthy right now. But if you wanted to mine Bitcoin right now, you would need a ever increasingly larger and larger processing unit to do so. And it just asked me the question of, well, at what point does it stop scaling upward and it levels off to be able to, like, plateau to be able to run a network? So I kind of just, I wouldn't even say like crunch the numbers. I kind of just did some basic math, sort of equating the amount of power used to scale it from where it was in 2019 in the hash power to where it is now in the amount of power growth. And if you do that it follows an exponential curve. Like, you could plot the curve out perfectly. And if you keep doing that outwork, by the time you get somewhere between 5 and 10%, you don't have enough power on the planet to maintain the amount of power that needs to go into the system to execute the Bitcoin network. And people like to make this excuse that, like, oh, well, all these other systems are all incredibly energy intensive. Also, what makes Bitcoin so wrong? And it's not that Bitcoin uses a ton of energy, which is a problem. It is that Bitcoin energy scaling problem that gets exponentially worse the more people that are on the network. And it's one of those things too. There's a few things that come with that, but the main point is that. And then you can kind of go into speculating of, well, what would happen if it wasn't, if it wasn't economically viable to run on the network anymore, or what would happen if there was a consolidation event and one node ran a 51% attack because it's not economically viable and people left. Like, there's so many different avenues that you can go down that's based off this one fundamental problem, and it only gets worse too if you get into like the tether thing, because if you pull liquidity from the network and the value drops. One thing I also stated before too is there's a hypothetical value out there that the miners needed to be able to continue mining Bitcoin profitably, or nobody will be able to. So there are a few, and this all comes down to the scaling problem. It really does come down to the overall energy scaling problem that create all these other bubble problems out from it. And there is no, like, people like to say that there's a solution in the Lightning Network and some other stuff too. And it's one of those things where yeah, the best way I could describe it is, imagine like having your uncle, right? And he's got his like old like Chevy truck from the 80s that he loves so much. And he's like, look, like, whatever you have to say about it, we could just make it new. We could update it. And to yourself, no, there's no amount of anything you can put on that truck that's going to make it run like a new Prius. Like, I'm sorry, like, you could put a Prius engine in there and it'll still run like a freaking truck. Like, and that's essentially where Bitcoin is. Bitcoin's in a position where the fundamental architecture of how it was built out, and it's kind of funny too, because I actually have my own suspicions that whoever built Bitcoin knew this problem, and I think they launched it out there because they have a better system already. Because it doesn't, if you wanted to say Satoshi Nakamoto was so smart to create the Bitcoin network, you can honestly, like, you can't say that he wasn't smart enough to realize the scaling problem in the math of the system he created. Like, you could write out the problem on the math of a napkin and find out how much power it would take over so many people using the network, solely based off the amount of people that use the network the first year, and how the hash rate changed. Like, it's kind of crazy that people don't talk about it, but I think it is one of those things where I think if people talked about it, it could actually cause people to panic, because it's one of those things where most people aren't really accustomed to the math of it, but it doesn't take a genius to realize that something can be mathematically improbable, and it's very easy to tell that it's mathematically improbable, even though you may not know the technical, algebraic formulation that causes that improbability. And I think that's why people don't talk about it, because I think people are genuinely scared that that may be the case. And you may call me wrong, whatever, but that doesn't change the fact that if that is the case, there's a huge problem with proof of work systems as a whole. And it's something, like I said, people don't talk about it, but it's an inevitability. And one thing that you actually see now is you'll actually see a strain on the electrical infrastructure before you saw that problem of us not having enough power to run the Bitcoin network. You'll see them short out their local electrical infrastructure way before you see there not being enough power to run the Bitcoin network, because it's so power intensive.
They're already kind of talking about that in Rockdale, Texas. Okay, let's just say hypothetically, we take all the transfer transactions off of the Bitcoin blockchain, and we transfer everything with the XRP ledger. Like, for example, Spendabits, it uses the XRP ledger. So we're going to take all those transactions off. We're going to put those on the ledger. So the only thing that is required of the rigs now in the mining farms is just to produce the remaining Bitcoin that is still out there, which is even going to be halved again. So what do you think about that?
So there is a fundamental problem with proof of work that that breaks all of this into everything. And the problem is it's in proof of work. So what ends up happening is you have all these nodes competing for the Bitcoin by being able to crack the hash. Well, one cracks the hash, gets the Bitcoin, and the rest of them just completely wasted whatever electricity they had. And there's no amount of extra network that you could put onto this that would basically eliminate all that extra wasted energy from all the nodes that essentially didn't do anything other than compete to try to basically crack the hash. And unless you wanted to rewrite the Bitcoin code to be something else, there's no real, like I said, it's like the Chevy. It's like, well, what if we change the Chevy to not be a Chevy anymore? Well, then it's not a Chevy anymore. Like,
well, they are going to put through Taproot. It looks like it got the 90% approval from the miners. I don't know. This is way beyond anybody's. I think it's way beyond anybody's ability to solve right now. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. All right. So you've got this what was this question about? This is about the ISO, the ISO 222. It looks like they're going to do domestic by what, 2023, and 2025 is going to be for cross border. Is that right? I don't know if I have that right.
Is that what the Fed's saying?
Well, that's why I asked you, because every time you go to look up the exact dates, it's changed, it's been revised, it's this date here, it's this date on Swift. Yeah, I don't know. So, okay,
One,
so we
one
don't
thing
have
that
to get bogged down on the date.
I was gonna say, if you want, the way I like to look at things, and I've been following the Fed for like the whole interest rates meme for a really long time, and it's literally just like that for anything. So if they say they're gonna do it in 2025, well, sure, cool, but then they could all of a sudden one day say we're doing it today, guys, and there you go. And then the next day they could say we're totally stopping that, even though we said we're. So it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, sure, there are plans, but anything can happen at any time because that's kind of what ends up happening anyway.
Yeah.
That doesn't change the fact that it's not like, there's no like scheme or anything. I just think the people that really run our ecosystem aren't as sophisticated as we like to give them credit for, and that's pretty much it. So
Well, having a de facto standard though is for a common language, and Algo, XDC, Ripple, Visa, Swift. I mean, it is going to be an improvement. That's for sure.
yeah, one thing you see with ISO in general. So ISO, the new ISO, the 20022 system now, it was actually proposed in 2004, and it was originally going to be adopted in like the late 20 teens, and a lot of European countries adopted it. But the main gist of it is, and you see this with the cryptos, but this also goes for general payments, is that standard. Right now, the current ISO standard is a Swift standard. So Swift dominates that standard. I forgot what the exact number was, but Swift is primarily like the number one person on that standard. This new standard, it's essentially broadening the standard, but at the same time narrowing it to be essentially a set of categories to where all the banks in the world can essentially interoperate with each other without having to worry about being able to accept said payment. Where before they would typically be going through Swift. Not all of them would go through Swift, but a big chunk of them would be. So it basically set the standard. But I think the thing with ISO that's going to change is I think Swift had a stronghold when it came to international trade and international commerce because of before the internet and moving from the before internet times to the internet. Swift was that solution to create that e-commerce, cross borders payment. But Swift is slow in comparison to what we have now. So I think what the new ISO system is essentially just utilizing newer technologies to essentially do what the broader backend to do what the broader backend payment sector already did. Now, this doesn't mean Swift's going to be gone. It means Swift is just going to be adopting the same ISO technologies that any of these other companies would be adopting. I just think that the number one thing that comes into common with these technologies is they're able to be fast, they're able to be standardized, and I think the next thing is there's going to be a certain level of automation, which brings into the cryptos and why they're important. Right now, Swift is essentially just a corporate entity that's running a bunch of people that's running a bunch of people. But if you're able to create a automated system where you had one bank's automated system interact with another bank's automated system, you get a lot better interoperability between the two banks, but you also get better efficiency because you don't have to have people managing people, and then you have less errors because people make errors, obviously. But yeah, you're able to essentially get a level of automation. I think that's the real utility of the ISO is it's going to be a new messaging payment system that's standardized, but also be able to integrate a standard open automated platform or automated messaging system that can operate with multiple platforms. And
yeah, the messaging system is going to be an XML approach, right? It has a non-Latin alphabet, and it'll be interoperable, and it'll have this rich data. It'll be able to actually have this quality data that you can put multiple invoices through instead of just one message at a time. You'll be able to compose multiple messages, and it'll actually extract out, it'll be much more feature rich. Yeah. Okay. So will it cause a demand? do you think, on any of these tokens? When that goes through, do you see a demand?
Yeah, but I think the thing is the demand is already here. It's just the demand is already here. It's just the appliance for it isn't. And what I really mean by that is when it comes to any of the banks operating off this ISO standard, they can use these tokens. And if you look at some of the partnerships that some of these tokens have, a lot of financial institutions do use these tokens, but they're using them to a minimal degree as opposed to their total portfolio. So what does that mean? Well, it means that it's not like all of a sudden they're just gonna like just flip demand and all of a sudden everybody's just gonna be using these tokens. But you're gonna see a broader build in demand. And I think that build in demand is already priced into the token price because they're using it. So I think the thing that really is going to determine a new case of, I guess you could say, broad demand is if there was some sort of announcement or some sort of federal economic policy basically stating X, Y, and Z in regards to either the tokens themselves or the processes that will use the tokens. But I think everything as a whole will be getting priced in anyway. So you would end up seeing price movement for a lot of these tokens way before you saw the announcement being priced in due to due to due to use case. And I don't think it's going to be as crazy or dramatic as a lot of people think it is. I don't think it's going to be just a one day overnight thing. I think it can be with an announcement. If the Federal Reserve put out some sort of announcement saying, here's the new banking structure, everything else is out the window, blah, blah, blah. Sure. But as a whole, I think what you'll end up seeing is, I guess the best way you could put it is, you'll end up seeing a overall, I guess you could say, a utility bull run of all the institutions that are currently using the technologies, fighting to use what's left of the technologies. And then whatever's left for the retail is essentially going to dictate that last little bit of price. Because like I said, if they're already using the tech, then the fact that the price is going up doesn't negate them from being able to use the tech. And the fact that other people are getting into the technology doesn't do anything for them to use the tech. So if they're already using it, other people using it doesn't drive up your demand as a whole. You know what I mean? And the price going up just allows you to have more liquidity in the tokens that you already had. So it, like I said, so it's not like you really need more demand. Demand's already there. It's just you start adopting more and more and more of it because you know you can essentially go about using these technologies in a regulatory safe way, but also be able to use them to the full extent that you're able to use them. Because right now, part of it too, it goes into this Metcalfe effect, where you need a network to operate in order to utilize the overall like value of the network. And if not everyone's using it, then using it doesn't give you that maximum value. So the more people that use it, it's almost like the demand stays the same, but as more people use it, the supply dries up. So the price goes up because the demand is the supply is getting dried up as the demand staying the same because of that broader adoption. And because the supply is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, you'll see the price move further and further and further because of that. At least I believe you will.
Yeah. So you believe that possibly if there is this realized vision where there are big pools of XRP planted all over the globe to tap in and to draw from on an on-demand basis, and as that demand to draw off it increases, do you think it'll have an impact then on supply, right?
Yeah, because what's gonna end up happening too is you got to remember the supply that we're talking about is it's almost like the general floating supply, because you got to remember if this is used as a currency, a lot of the XRP is going to be sitting on a bunch of balance sheets. So like the fact that it's sitting as the store of value and as a like payment mechanism on the balance sheet of a bunch of companies doesn't negate the overall use case. But because they need it on their balance sheets to be able to use it when they need to use it, it sucks up a ton of the supply until there's a very, very, very thin circulating supply on either the exchanges or in basically exchanging in such a manner that's not directly involved in direct transactions for some form of purchase. Usually, if it's usually involved in some sort of broader exchange, like on an exchange, because like it's almost like how you if you almost look at dollars, right? The majority of dollars aren't sitting around, floating around in people's hands or in bank accounts. They're literally sitting on some balance sheet somewhere as some sort of representation of value for some company to tap into later. And that's the exact same thing is going to happen with XRP. The majority of XRP out there isn't just going to be sitting around floating around between people doing petty transactions. It's going to be on the back end books for settlements for big organizations. And it's mostly going to be not really sitting, because a lot of it's going to be moving, but it's going to be, a lot of it's going to be accumulated on, it's like it's going to be, it's the same way dollars are sitting on a balance sheet, the same way XRP will be sitting on a balance sheet in the future. And there's going to be a lot of XRP on a lot of different balance sheets being ready to be used for instant payments. And because they'll be sitting on those balance sheets, that circulating supply for just general XRP, just for the sake of having XRP, as opposed to just using it to, me paying my bills from another company in XRP, that little bit floating around is really going to cause that supply demand,
Impact.
spike, whatever it may be. Yeah, that impact. Because if you wanted to get XRP, that's really where it comes down to. If you wanted to get XRP, you have to go through somebody who has XRP. And if you have XRP, you're not just going to give up your XRP because you're using it for enterprise uses. You see what I mean? So that's where the supply keeps shrinking and shrinking and shrinking while the demand stays the same, because everyone's going to go, I already have XRP, I'm not going to get rid of it. While the new people are going to go, I need XRP to use my enterprise. Where is it? And price is going to keep on going until it finds a place to level off at.
Yeah. You like XDC, I know that. And so there is one project in particular that I'm really curious about. If you know anything through your research, through what you've heard, and that is the Contour project that is happening in Singapore with some other countries.
I haven't gotten involved in the Contour project.
Okay, no problem.
And to be clear, I love all the tokens. The reason why I like XDC is just because I use it the most, because I operate on Corda and I execute the smart contracts with it. I'm definitely more of an XRP hodler. Like, I'm not gonna execute XRP for a smart contract, not even one. So but I love all the tokens. I just use XDC the most just currently.
Yeah. Well, then if you love all the tokens and you're a hodler, that kind of leads me to the question of, do you think that we should, in terms of, let's take 10 years, should we hodl or maybe even park it into a Roth IRA? Or do you think we should maximize and leverage these tokens through as many products in the DeFi space that's coming on strong as possible? What do you think? Is there a balance there? What are your thoughts?
I kind of have a weird answer, basically being neither. I don't think I mean, if you want to call it sort of a hodling strategy of just putting it in your retirement and not looking at it, I guess that's a way to look at it. But the main thing is, I guess here's the best way to put it. The main thing is, for one, the DeFi space is just so, there are good projects in there, but there are a lot more scams in the DeFi space than anything else. And you don't necessarily need to it's almost like you don't necessarily need to keep leveraging your assets to try to keep accumulating more and more through all of these different I don't even know what to call them. I don't like the way people go about staking, because like I said, it's the banking problem. There are a bunch of regulations in place to make sure the banks can't fail due to holding assets, but these staking platforms don't have that, and they could just fall over and take everybody's money with it, and that's that. And they can actually cause a domino effect where other exchanges lending to each other could all go under because there's nothing stopping any of that. And you can see this too if you look at a lot of the DeFi projects. Look at some of the interest rates, some of the APYs. They're absolutely insane, and there's no guarantee that could come to fruition. And if it does, fine. But if it doesn't and it implodes, you end up with these huge, they end up being way bigger implosions than they otherwise would be, because of how risky they are. So I think as a whole, I would say as a whole, you're better off not being a developer or anything and say, I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do with my XRP on my own, than to stick it into somebody else's project and cross your fingers that it doesn't go belly up. And that's the thing, a lot of these, you got to remember too, a lot of these assets are the overall, so you got to remember the overall value of these assets are going to be entirely dictated by the mean demand of the future utility of enterprises using these applications. So the overall appreciation in value from use case is absolutely going to trump anything else that you do with it. Now, this isn't me saying hodl all your coins. This is me, and I'm just going to say this in general for anybody. If you truly believe in the technology and you truly believe in the space, you truly believe in the interest rate, you truly believe in the absolute use case in whatever technology you're invested in, well then, well, the overall understanding of how you feel about that tech is essentially saying this technology is going to have a broader use case in the future that's currently not taking place now, and I'm going to wait until that broader use case comes to fruition until I essentially do anything with these assets. Well, that's going to have a higher return than anything. I mean, this is assuming you believe in the technology. I'm not even saying the technology you believe in is the correct one. I'm saying this is from the logic of believing in the technology. If you ever believed in the technology anyway, then why are you trying to get these short-term gains in the first place? Because you understand that the technology is going to appreciate due to the use case and demand and due to people actually adopting it. So why would short-term why would short-term volatility, why would short-term gains, even trying to get like a a yearly return of like 4% on like your retirement or something, in my opinion, it almost doesn't even matter. And in my opinion, you're almost better off, because the way people are going to make money off of these technologies are they're going to conduct international commerce. So if I like let's say I was let's say I was some sort of a company that did international remittance transactions, and I was using XRP. Well, I'll use XRP to help send money from point A to point B and then take a spread off of that person sending the money and then continuously make money off the technology rather than put it in some sort of financial device. So you can use these technologies to make money off them. Most, like I said, most in a retail sense, you're not going to do much with it. But the people that know what to do with it will do what they need to with it. So what does that leave the average person? Well, the average person, like I said, if you believe in the technology and that there's going to be an overall growth curve of people adopting it, and the overall mean demand and the overall mean utility of the technology hasn't come to fruition yet. I'm literally just I'm not telling your token's the right answer. I'm not telling you whatever you believe in is the right answer. I'm just saying from a logical standpoint of you believing in the technology and you believing in the use case, it makes no sense to do anything else. You see what I mean? Now, if you're a trader, you're a trader. You don't care what happens, tomorrow or the day after. You care about what you're able to do. But don't act like a trader if you believe in the technology, because you're just and I kind of have this whole like pet peeve of why are people saying that crypto is the future but then cashing out into fiat again. So it becomes this weird little like the overall idea of believing in these technologies kind of contradicts trying to make short-term gains with whatever you're trying to do, because uh if you, like I said, if you have the philosophy of the overall utility of these technologies is going to dictate the price, and we're not at that overall utility yet, you would understand, or at least you'd be going in on the bet that your investment in the broader use case of the technology will trump any other investment that you would have done with the capital otherwise. You see what I mean? And that's sort of my stance on everything, because I hate how like regular people try to turn into these traders. And I'm like, if you're a trader, like first off, if you're a trader, you're not caring about half the crap like most of these people are caring about. Like you're almost literally caring about like the candle size. But regular people are getting so obsessed over like short-term price movement when this is so much more of a macro view of things. And people may go, well, it's speculative and it's risky and it's whatever, and sure, but you need to understand that. And that's the thing, like it's either, and that's assuming you have the mentality that these technologies are going to be future use cases. If you don't have that mentality, then yeah, sure, everything you're doing makes sense. But if you do have that mentality, then like I said, give me a good reason for me to do anything else with my XRP or XDC or otherwise, if I truly believe that the overall use case in the future is going to be that is what I say it is, or what I believe it is, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I'm following you. I'm following you all the way. Okay, now we get into just three easy questions, all right? And this is more about you. I'm
Okay.
curious, yeah, I'm curious what your favorite language is to code in. Do you have a favorite?
Oh, yeah, actually, my favorite, I guess you say my favorite main language is Python, but I code in a bunch of other languages like Swift for iOS and Daml for smart contracts. But my favorite is Python, and it's a lot of favorites too. It's pretty popular. But yeah, Python's my favorite language.
When did you start? When did you start,
I
actually diving into the two languages?
So I started programming in high school. I might have been like 15 at the time. Might have been like sophomore, junior year, something like that. And I guess this is kind of funny. I got into programming because all of my friends were like hardcore modders that like did crazy stuff in like Left 4 Dead and GTA 5 and Gears. But they did all these, they basically created their own worlds in these games because they were modders. And they weren't like hardcore like programmers, but they were like systems guys and they knew how to like tweak the code in these games. So I got really into like, and I was already like a gamer. So I got like really into like kind of like that aspect of the games. But then I was like, well, like what better way to modify the code than to learn the code? And like, so I kind of got into that a little bit, into trying to like, it was kind of like a weird like the modding. There was definitely a bigger modding community back in like 2013, 2014, and there was like a whole community for stuff like that. But I used to get really really involved with modding video games, and then I decided I'm like I actually want to like learn the languages that these games use. And the main reason for that too is if you messed up on some of the files for modding, you couldn't run the game or anything. So you kind of had to have a basic understanding of what you're doing, or you have to like restart everything to try to get it to work. But yeah, it was kind of like video games and modding video games that got me into programming in high school.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I also tracked down one of your projects that you worked on when you were at Arizona State. What happened to that?
Oh yeah, so Wall App. I'm actually still working on Wall App. I'm working on a ton of different projects that Wall App operates off of.
You should
But
you should tell everybody what Wall App is, because I'm sure a lot of people didn't find that information about you.
yeah, so Wall App is a smart wallet. Is a digital wallet phone case that essentially allows you to hold your physical cards in a physical case around your phone, distribute your cards on demand through a user interface on the app, and then be able to use the app to deliberate payments from any of your different payment accounts, whether that be your credit card, your debit card, your PayPal, your Cash App, your crypto, whatever. You're able to use one card to have access to all of your accounts that essentially gets stored in a case that is a phone case, but it uses the app to essentially distribute the card like an ATM card. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it was it's still in the works. There's a lot going on in the background when it comes to Wall App and some of the applications that operate with that. But it's still in the works. I don't know if you saw the prototype. I had a prototype and some other stuff.
I just saw the video. Yeah, it was good. It's slick. I like it. I like it a lot. If you could build anything on Flare networks, these beautiful smart contracts using the virtual machine, Ethereum's virtual machine, and the XRP ledger, what would you build?
So one thing, sorry, my friend just walked out. One thing that I'd probably be pretty interested with Flare. So one thing that people don't talk about with smart contracts, and I very much encourage everyone listening to this or watching this to take this into consideration. All smart contract platforms have slightly different features when it comes to their smart contracts. So, and they all kind of have an edge. Like Algorand has stateful and stateless smart contracts. So some smart contracts can hold data and other smart contracts can't. The XRP ledger doesn't have smart contracts, but it has hooks that can interoperate with smart contracts. So that's something to take into consideration. Corda has contracts and smart contracts, so you can do self-signing executions and two-party executions. And the Flare network has, I almost forgot. I wrote it down right here. Yeah, state connectors. I almost forgot. I'm actually going to launch a video on Flare in the next couple days. But so
Right.
Flare has state connectors, and what state connectors allow you to do are you're able to monitor states on alternative platforms from the Flare platform, and then be able to use those state changes to execute smart contracts. So what does this mean? Well, I'm pretty sure that you may be aware of, and a lot of people listening may be aware of. People talk about Flare being that interledger framework between a bunch of different distributed ledger technologies. Well, this feature essentially allows for that interledger framework, because you could essentially have Flare use that feature to monitor states on, let's say, another smart contract platform, to be able to make executions based off of state changes on that platform. Now, what would I use this for? So one thing I think is quite interesting, and I think it'd be an interesting use case, would be if somebody were, and what's the best way I could put this? It's almost like if somebody could take the overall value on one network and then be able to create a alternative swap of value on another network. So here's an example. Let's say I had a Tesla stock on the XRP ledger, and I wanted to sell it to Billy, but Billy's application operates off the XLM ledger. So how are we going to do this? Well, what if there was a Flare smart contract that could essentially allow you to send that Tesla stock to the Flare smart contract, tell the smart contract what ledger you want to send that stock to, it be able to take that stock, create essentially a derivative of that stock while holding that stock in that smart contract, issue it onto that ledger to be able to make the fulfillment of the payment to the alternative person on the other ledger. But what does this mean? Because technically the other person isn't getting the original stock. They're getting essentially a derivative placed of what that stock may be. Well, all it would be is they would have ownership rights to that stock with that Stellar derivative. But if they wanted to get the physical stock that's on the XRP ledger, they could just deliver it to themselves by taking the derivative, sending it to the smart contract, and then redeeming the original stock with the ownership token, I guess you could say. And that's something I would do, because I think, well, one, essentially, if you were running let's say you were running an arbitrage application and you wanted to run trades, you can essentially have broader liquidity into multiple blockchains with something simple like that.
Do you think you'll build something on Flare?
Actually, I'm already working on some applications that utilize multiple decentralized ledger technologies, including Flare. So yeah, it's mostly like I said, they all offer different types of smart contracts, and they're all useful for different use cases. So like I said, the being able to monitor state changes on other ledgers is a huge use case that I'm only able to get from Flare. So yeah, absolutely.
Very good. When you're ready to talk about that in greater detail, I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah,
all right, we're to the end, but I've got like a 5-question. I'm going to give you one word, and I want you to tell me the first thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Okay.
Satoshi.
David Schwartz.
El Salvador.
Okay. It's one of those, like, who cares about El Salvador?
It's okay if your mind just doesn't have anything, that's okay. Ready? Number 3, Dogecoin.
Bitcoin.
Jay Clayton.
One of the biggest jokers of 2020.
The last one is it's actually 2 words together. Quincy Jones.
Oh, that's funny. I don't know. Hopefully a cool guy.
You know, I just wondered if your name was taken from the great singer.
Yeah, it was. My dad's a studio musician, so he's kind of a fan of the artist.
Me too.
Oh, that's cool.
So I was just thinking you would just come out with one of his best songs, you know.
Oh my God.
Oh, Quincy, you've been really a delight. You get everybody's brain working so fast. I want to leave it to you to summarize, to say something that you really feel like you didn't get out and that you want to wrap the video up with and take us out in terms of your thoughts. What do you want to say?
I guess this would be a call out to the broader crypto community as a whole. And one thing I would like to say, and sort of, I guess you could say something I'm trying to push for, is we're investing in technology here. So we need to talk about the technology, and we need to talk about it in a manner that makes sense and in a manner that's intelligent. You know, having a bunch of moon boys screaming on Twitter that we're all going to get rich this time isn't really, like, you can only do that so many times before people go, yeah, all right, cool, whatever. And there's a lot of cool fundamental features to these technologies that really don't get talked about. And I think part of that too is a lot of people don't know what these technologies be used for. And I'd be willing to like tell people, go figure something out. You'll have an idea that you may have and go, hey, you know, maybe I could try to do that. It may not even work. It doesn't matter. It's more of just getting yourself thinking in such a manner that's causing not only to further innovation, but to also like to just bring more into the space outside of people screaming how big of a green candle that they're hoping for. And like I totally get it. Like that's like it's also finance, and you know these things have prices associated with them. So I totally get that. It's just I think there's so much more, and I think that's part of the reason why people are freaking out over my videos. Is I think there's so much more to be said about the space and then technology in the space, and I don't think anyone's really said anything until now. And I just want more people to talk more and more and more about it. So it's almost as if there's more things being said about the technology, the use case, the overall adoption being taken place, and why people would use these more than there are people just screaming, yeah, you know, this is such a green day today, blah, 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 this many percentage points. And you'll have those days, like, don't get me wrong, but you'll also have, you know, the up days, down days, left days, right days. But at the end of the day, you'll always have the technology. So why not talk about it? So.
Brilliant. Yeah, I'm really glad that was how you ended this video, because I couldn't agree with you more. Quincy, I wish you luck. I can hear your phone going. You probably have about 10 other requests.
It's Twitter and everything's been crazy. So
yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time, as I know right now you're just super, super popular and everybody wants to talk to you. And I'm sure everybody's going to enjoy having you bring all that knowledge that you have on the technology to the masses, because you're right, it's been a missing void in the space. Yeah, I mean, we have a few people talking about it once in a while.
Yeah. What I've noticed is the people that are talking about it are the people that have always been talking about it. So all of the developers on all of the chains will talk about it, like David Schwartz and, you know, some of the developers on some of the other popular chains and all the Ethereum developers. But in a general sense, unless it's something everybody looks up to, like I said, like David Schwartz or like any of these execs, most regular people in the general space aren't having the same combos. And I would honestly love to maybe like try to get in touch with like David Schwartz to bring those conversations to the space. And you know, because I like he's a huge inspiration for me. I've seen all of his lectures. I've watched every video on his YouTube channel. Like, huge inspiration for me. And part of the reason why I love the technology so much and why I believe in the technology so much, it's not that I trust Ripple or trust the general space. I truly trust, at the end of the day, the code that developers wrote. That's it. The same way you trust the code the developers wrote on your iPhone, on your app, the same way that you trust when you go into that banking application, all of the application features that you normally use would be there. The exact same way that you trust those applications that you use every day is the same way that I trust these blockchain applications. That's why I say, why are we worried about these short-term volatile spikes and the short-term news and whatever, when like the overall use case and adoptions of these technologies hasn't even come to fruition yet. So there's so much to be said, but in the meantime, I love the technology. I love talking about it. I love talking to people. Like, for me, like, this may be new for the internet. I've been blabbing on about this just like I have been in my videos for months now, like, to anyone who's been listening. So to the internet, this is new, but to all my friends, they're like, oh, thank God that we don't have to listen to Quincy go on for the 50th time. Like, so.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. The time flew for me.
Same. It's been a pleasure. Yeah, it's been amazing.
I just want to say good luck to you. Keep that technology focus, and I hope that I can catch up with you again, maybe 6 months out, when you know, because space is changing and happening so fast.
Yeah.
So, no doubt. I want to keep in touch with you, and I wish you luck on all of the different channels that you're going to appear, and have fun with it. Enjoy this time, and yeah, keep leveling up everybody's technology. Yeah, that's really just so valuable. What you are doing in the space is to help people level up. You know, as I told you right before we started, you have this ability. People who weren't interested in technology before and maybe felt like the technology was going over their head, you're able to reach those people and they're interested, and you've got a huge audience that is interested in now in the technology. So keep it up.
All right, I'm happy to. I'm happy to, keep spreading the knowledge and keep spreading convos about what we can do with this tech.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. I'm going to say goodbye to you now.
All right, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.